Canadian border security has dominated these trade talks with the U.S. president and White House officials. But new data shows Canadian Border Services have actually confiscated more illegal drugs coming north than U.S. officials have seized heading south. Numbers from the Canada Border Services Agency show in 2024, border agents stopped almost 8.3 million grams of illegal drugs that are coming up from the States. That's more than 100% increase over 2022. So joining us this morning on why this is an issue and why it keeps growing is Chris Lewis, former OPP commissioner and CTV News public safety analyst. Good to have you with us.
Good morning.
So back to those numbers from last year, border agents also reporting they seized more than 469,000 doses of illegal drugs that are coming up from the United States. That's more than 3 times as we had in 2022. So what's behind this jump?
Well, I don't know what's behind the jump. Sometimes it's a matter of how hard you look. And sometimes it's just good luck that you happen to run across it. Other times it's certainly intelligence-driven, and ultimately, investigatively, they seize a certain amount of drugs based on, strong police work. But at the same time, it's always been a pipeline northbound. President Trump has raised concerns about what's heading south. It's mere pittance compared to what's been coming north from South America, Central America, and the United States into Canada, particularly on the handgun front, which is of huge concern to us all.
Why don't we hear any talk of that when we start to hear President Trump talk about the illegal drugs that are flowing in from Canada? Why does there not seem to be any pushback on the illegal drugs that come up from, or the illegal drugs and guns that come up from the United States? You know, as former OPP commissioner, in this province alone, most of the gun crime is with illegal weapons.
Almost all the gun crime is, without a doubt. The vast majority are traced back to the U.S., and other guns they can't determine the origin of are probably brought in from the U.S. So that's a huge concern. That's what's killing Canadians, is illegal handguns from the United States. So why aren't politicians pushing back more? I don't know. I guess it's some sort of diplomacy at work. I'm not sure what the rationale is for it. But the issue is we need to secure the border for us, because things are coming north that are killing Canadians. At the same time, we need to work with the U.S. to help prevent things from going the other way. So it's a real multi-purpose function here, and ultimately our new fentanyl czar, we're not quite sure what that means, is supposed to help in terms of building relationships, etc., but that remains to be seen. But all that aside, Anne-Marie, we need to strengthen our border. We've needed to do it for years, but we require people to do that.
Okay, then what are some of the suggestions for strengthening the border? You mentioned that we have this new fentanyl czar, and so he's in charge of making sure that's more secure. But given your experience in policing, what are some of the holes that you think need to be filled in order to make the border more secure?
Well, the CBSA and RCMP are both short thousands of people right across the country. We've got 5,000 miles of border that is largely unprotected, except for specific border crossings, but everything in between is not. So the OPP and some others are helping the RCMP and CBSA secure that, at least in the Ontario portion. But that can't be sustained. The feds need to hire thousands of people, which will take time and significant money to do that. And they need to continue on a larger scale the intelligence gathering, focused investigations, deterrent patrols. Yes, some shiny new helicopters are going to help, but they're not going to solve the problem. And you need to have people on the ground to actually take action and make arrests and seize the products that are coming into the country. So that's a huge and significant undertaking. The appointment of a czar isn't going to fix that. Hopefully, based on his experience, he can help build some of the relationships up and get the funding out of the feds to do more. But it certainly requires a whole influx of bodies to help.
Yeah, when we take a look at the new measures that are being put in place, there's a lot of money. There's supposed to be more manpower coming. Where do they need to focus their efforts? I know there's a lot of talk about, guarding against migrants, illegal migrants coming up from the States, but what can we do to stop the guns and the drugs?
It has to be a real tightening of the border. Right now, thousands and thousands of people cross the border into Canada every day. CBSA cannot stop every vehicle and search it. So there has to be intelligence-led investigations that ultimately help them identify who's bringing it and when. But at the same time, in between all those ports of entry, whether it be Detroit or Buffalo, Fort Erie, etc., there's unprotected turf. When you go to Western Canada, there's thousands of miles where there's no border crossings, but you can walk across the border into the United States and back and forth. So that really needs to be a huge focus. Deterrent patrols, uniform, high visibility, at the same time, intelligence gathering and focused investigations. But once again, that requires thousands of bodies that do not currently exist.
What about organized crime south of the border? My understanding is during COVID, a lot of them moved their operations because the border closed. They moved their operations from Canada down to the U.S., and now that flow is part of that is part of the flow that's come north.
No, you know, the organized crime have always been moving stuff north. If there's money in it, they'll move it. Back in the 90s, it was tobacco and alcohol coming from the States into Canada, millions of dollars a week. Now it's guns mostly, tons and tons of drugs. That's always been there. So organized crime just bends with the flow. They bend with the flow easier than the industrial countries manage to bend with the flow of this, you know, the demands and needs, etc. They just do it, and they don't have to worry about budgets. They don't have to worry about bodies. They've got all kinds of money. They make it happen. We, on the other hand, as governments and security agencies, have to work under budgets, under legal frameworks, and sometimes those don't all jive with trying to identify and mitigate the effects of organized crime.
Chris Lewis, always great to have you on the show. Have a great weekend.
It's a pleasure always. Thank you. You too.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.